It's official. Winter's here. At least we have new toys to handle the situation. It dawned on me that I drove out the driveway without kind of explaining where I was going today, which isn't a big deal, but it ties into our 50/20 Detroit project. That's actually plugging away really, really well, but I also got to explain kind of what we're doing. My friend, mechanic Larry, stopped in the other day as we were dismantling it because we had some questions on the clutch, and ever since this, Larry was here last summer when we rolled this project in the yard, and we all were really excited and also a little intimidated by it because it was definitely outside of our comfort zone. You literally can see the sidewall of the cylinder coming apart because of the steel delaminating.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
Yeah. And Larry was here last week when we got everything dismantled and we got the clutch out and we were going through the clutch and we were inspecting that and we were kind of getting a game plan for that. But the other thing we did when we pulled the motor out, we actually pulled the hydraulic pump out, and Larry took the hydraulic pump home, and Larry's gone through a bunch of these. And so last week, at the tail end of last week, I actually drove over to Larry's house because I've always wanted to watch him go through one of these. I've pulled them apart, I've pulled them out of tractors, but I've never been the guy that actually puts them all back together. And my goal here was to film Larry dismantling the pump and then going back together. Well, last week we actually dismantled it.
All right, hydraulic pump is in the truck.
Step one. You knew I was roping you into this project. There's no way we were not doing this project without you. Before we jump into this project, I want to just explain a few basic things. If you're a farmer and you don't pull on wrenches every day and you go to talk to John Deere or you go talk to a repair shop and you're like, hey, I got a manual. That's true. A lot of times what you have is the operations manual. Now the operation manual do the basics, tell you how to run the piece of equipment, some basic things like that. But then what you don't have, what they call a tech manual. And a tech manual is going to give you the general idea of how to tear things apart and fix it and bolt it back together. And typically, I don't know this for sure, but this is off the top of my head, I believe the 10, the 20, the 30, and the 40 series technical manuals was the only manual that you needed. But then when you got to the 50 series and beyond, the 50 series, the 60 series, the 8000 series, then they had another manual too. You had your tech manual, but then you had the operations and tests. So the tech manual will still tell you how to put bolts in and out and bolt things on and what the procedure should be for that. But then the operation and test is going to start to actually break down like what should your switches be at, etc. It's going to take it to like the next step. And as you can see in these manuals here, I hope you have a manual as beaten up as this one. This 4850 tech manual, man, I've looked at that a whole bunch. But then beyond that, there's actually two other books, and there might be more, I don't know for sure. All of those tech manuals are only going to talk about basic components. For when it comes to the engine, they're going to have a separate motor for that. They're going to have a separate manual for the 466 and the 404 motors. But then the other manual is actually what we're going to be using today. The other manual is going to be the hydraulic piston pump repair manual. And so your basic hydraulic pump is going to be a separate manual too. Between all this stuff, I'm hoping it kind of clears up some misconceptions, because like I said, I've been the guy that walks in like, oh, I got a manual on that, and then you just find out, oh, I had an operator's manual, I didn't have any of the tech manuals. Been there. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about here real quick before we get into the video with Larry, how do you actually get access to these pumps? There's usually two different ways to get them. You either start by pulling the radiator and a whole bunch of lines and you lift them out the top, or depending on the application, you can drop them out the bottom. Now, I've done both. I'll tell you right off the bat, your 20 series, your 20, 30, and 40 series, especially if it's two-wheel drive, it's not that bad just to drop them out the bottom. On the 50 series, you can do both. You can either pull them out the top or drop them out the bottom. You have to, on the 50 series two-wheel drive, it's not too bad. There's a light shield you got to pull off. Same with the 40 series, like a 4840. On the 50 series front wheel assist, you actually have this big casting, and this big casting can kind of be a little bit of a bear to pull off. Totally doable, but I'm going to tell you the easiest way. And so usually if you get all the nuts and bolts off, you can let it rest there and then pull it down and then let it rest on the drive shaft and then just kind of transition it down to the ground. Okay, after you do that, then it isn't too bad to pull them out, pull the pump and the webbing out the bottom. You can do it. I've done it several times. I think the one time I had to do it, I actually jacked up the tractor just to give me a little more clearance between that and the front end because there's a little wear on the pins. But you kind of rotate it to like the 2 o'clock position and kind of just like drag it out. Careful, it's all heavy. That's the downside with pulling it out the bottom. If you go from the top, the trade-off is you got to get a whole bunch of lines and you got to get a whole bunch of things out of the way. Okay, I've done both. If I have the time and I can put the piece of equipment in the shop and work on it, I kind of prefer pulling it out the top. If sometimes you just got to get low down and dirty because you're in a hurry, and you just kind of pull it out the bottom and wing it. Sometimes doing that, you're actually going to need some specialty tools. One of the toughest things, and this is why pulling it from the top is actually easier. One of the toughest things if you're going to take it out the bottom is trying to get all the lines to crack loose. That's actually one of the actual toughest things. Get creative. Don't be afraid of building a few custom wrenches like these, because believe me, I've pulled these out in fields before, and some of these tools here got built trying to stay ahead of a snowstorm. So I was trying to get a 4955 back together in a cornfield in February as a snowstorm was rolling in. Hey, things you do, right? All right, so I'm here with Mechanic Larry in his garage, of all places, but how many of these pumps do you think you've actually gone through? Oh, there's the look. There's the look. Like, are you kidding me, Junior?
This year?
Okay, we're at the end of 2024. How many this year do you think you've gone through?
Probably a dozen.
Yeah.
And if I've been doing this 25 years, that's a lot.
What's usually the ratio of good to bad? Is it like 1 in 10 or?
Repairables is probably maybe 20% are not repairable, 80% usually. Usually got a shaft seal leaking, and typically it's because the shaft is worn or the bearings are loose and then the shaft is moving and then it takes the front seal out.
So most guys usually stop when it starts leaking oil there?
Oh.
They don't just keep driving it?
No. There's usually about that much dirt underneath before they... Yeah, it's been leaking for a while. So,
I have definitely seen them leak out that shaft and I'm like, not now. It's unfeasible.
oil's cheap.
Yep, oil's that day it is, yeah. I've also brought you some of these that are like louder. The pump itself is louder than the engine. Typically when you got one that's louder than the engine, what's going on in there?
Well, once we get this apart, I can explain that.
Okay.
There's a bearing race on the shaft, and the pistons are just so loose. It's like a worn out engine. The piston is loose in there. You'll know right away. Once we get these 8 plugs, we'll get the head off first. This is called the head of the pump. Inside, this is where you adjust your pressure for the pump. This one has been threaded in quite a ways. Okay. Normally there's about 3 threads sticking out. If you look and there's an adjustment here, this is where you set your hydraulic pressure up and down. And typically there's 1 to 2, maybe 3 threads sticking out. This one has been threaded in quite a ways already, so we could have a pump that's got some wear.
But this is actually kind of cool because you have kind of a homemade bracket there, and
just a big piece of angle iron with 2 holes in it.
Perfect.
And it mounts up to the pump, and so John Deere's got a tool for it too, but this was a lot less expensive.
All right, so right off the bat, you know the pump's been sitting for a decade plus. What do you think it's gonna look like inside?
I think it's gonna look good because I'm looking at the oil as it's coming out. It's old and stinky, but it's not rusty. So
okay.
I think it'll be all right. So we'll pull her down and see how bad it is.
You know I've been the guy over the years that's brought you several hydraulic pumps and you get into them and you're like, no.
New pump.
Okay, so this is off John Deere 20 series. A lot of the other stuff I brought you in the past was always 40 and 50, 55, 60 series, power shift stuff. If the tractor is not power shift, do typically the hydraulic pumps look like they're in a little better shape, or does any of that seem to matter?
It doesn't really seem to matter.
Okay.
It depends how much debris has gone through the pump.
Gotcha.
That's what's gonna take these out.
So when the filters get shiny or sparkly,
yep. And
fix that, don't keep running it?
Filter leaf valve opens up and dumps dirty oil.
That never happens, right?
Yes, it does.
Never happens. Believe me, who's gonna doubt you? I've never had one of these opened up, but yeah.
One of the things that you want to do is a lot of guys will mark 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got a system where I just lay everything out and I know which way I put them in. So 1, 2, I'll mark them here versus physically marking them on the pump body. This is called the head of the pump. This has got the stroke control valve screen on this side for the filter screen. Stroke control valve tells the pump when to turn on, when to turn off. When there's a demand for oil, it puts the pump into stroke. This pump typically, as the shaft is turning, all 8 pistons are in the out position. When it's building 2,500 PSI or 2,300, all those pistons are out, so the pump shaft is just spinning. Once there's a demand for oil, the pressure drops, the pistons come back against the cam racing here, and it'll pump then it starts to pump again. Right now, with no pressure, all 8 pistons, as this, it's like a camshaft. It's moving and opening and closing each valve, each piston in and out.
Can I ask one more question?
Uh-huh.
Why did John Deere put that little line on the bottom of the pump?
Seal drain line?
What's it called?
Seal drain line. I don't know why they put it at the bottom. You do have to replace that, obviously.
Yeah, it was junk. I just know many years of putting these in, that's the line everyone always has choice words over, isn't it?
Yep. I don't know where else they could have put it.
Okay.
Now, the early 10 series didn't have this line on it.
Gotcha.
But you could add it. And when you did that, you had to drill a hole into the head of the pump, into the nose of the pump.
Okay.
And then you would run a line right between here with a steel pipe, piece of pipe fitting basically. And then you'd run one of these lines all the way to the back. So why they put it on the very top is or on the bottom. I don't know where else they put it because that port goes all the way. Once we get it apart too, you'll be able to see where that port, how it comes out of it.
And most people don't put 10 of them on.
No. So, we're ready to start.
Go to
Coming
10.
apart is easy because there's no torquing. So the Milwaukee is this is the easy part. Going back together, everything's got to get torqued, so you can't just zip lines on. Okay. To shim up the pump shaft. Now these this is the early style. Later style this was all one piece. So these, when you put them back in, you have to you peen them over a little bit. So this pump has probably not been apart before.
What do you mean peen them over a little bit?
You take a little ball peen hammer and you hold this down and then just tap it, just a little tap right here so it can't fall out of there.
Okay.
Because these springs feel like they're loose because normally when you take the head of the pump off.
So I already headed in a bad direction.
Normally they come out and that's why you got to peen them. This one, for some reason, they're not popping out all the way, which they normally do. Get all 8 of them, and there again, we're putting us all in the order. So when it goes back together, it all goes back together in the same holes.
And there's 8 of those?
8 of these, 1 for each piston, yep.
So when you actually pull them out,
there's a seat. It's like an engine valve seat.
Okay.
And then it goes into a seat inside the pump, down in there.
Okay.
And it just, the spring locks it into place. Now we might be replacing these springs, Eric, because I recall every one of these, because the 10 series had the same pump, but they'd pop out of there all the way. So.
Think that could be just from sitting?
Shouldn't be.
Like that's just.
There's a spec in the book. I can check what the free length of these is supposed to be.
I got a feeling that's probably inexpensive.
No, they're not going to do that. Piston number 1.
Watching the oil go in the pan, I was like, yes, I'm not responsible for dripping oil on your garage floor yet. About a year and a half ago, I think it was parts for Puff. I brought him here and didn't realize that he dripped a trail of oil from the middle of his driveway into his garage. Now, Larry's very mellow and very easy to get along with. That still doesn't mean he wants hydraulic oil dripped on his driveway. So we did our best to clean it up that night.
Now this is, if you were to have wear on the pump, this is where they would be. You'd have scuffing and scoring.
Okay, and that's actually looking
Looks very
pretty
nice.
decent.
Very nice.
Okay.
So
You don't have one laying around here that's like smoke, do you? Just to show, like,
no,
when it's this bad, replace it.
no, I don't have one of them around.
Will it be pretty visible? Like it's bad? Okay. Like you're not questioning if it's bad or not?
No, there's no question once you see that.
And that's these caps here?
That's, yep.
Okay.
And if one is good, typically they're all good because they're all operating the same amount. So now this is just repetition. You just gotta do it 8 times.
Want some help?
Well, usually.
It never goes smoothly when people are filming it. It doesn't.
You just go right up against the head of the bolt and it stays there.
Okay.
So now,
This is looking better than other stuff I brought you.
so far so good.
And you're just tapping on the end of the shaft there?
Yeah. And it's supposed to fall right out at this point. 2. All the pistons out, don't they?
You got 8 there? Well, good to see you're not perfect either.
Now it should fall right out of there.
So it's basically like a little camshaft.
Just like a camshaft. So as that's spinning, this piston's going in and out in that inner cavity.
And that's what's pushing oil.
Yep, that's a pump seal, just like that.
So now you can see on here, we have a little bit. Oh, okay, that was this oil. Okay, a little bit of a wear pattern, but not like a lip. You can't really physically feel anything.
Let's see what this O-ring here. This is the one that's always bad. Is this one?
So you had the plastic seal pack and then the O-ring.
Yeah, it goes on like this, and if you look at this is the one that will leak in short order.
So when you do have it leaking out the tractor, that's usually the one that's gone. Okay.
Because this seal is the outer seal here, this lip seal is mainly a dust seal. It's not a, this is the pressure seal. This one and this one are on the shaft like so, and they sit right there.
Now, can you, the $1 million question, can you put those two in with it in the tractor?
Absolutely not.
Nope. Okay. So no matter what, and usually if those are bad, you probably got something else going on.
I've had guys put just the outer seal in thinking that just the outer seal. No. It's getting so much, because once this packing is really, if you look at it, it should, look at this side, what it looks like. Now I'm gonna give it 180 and see what that looks like. How it's got, it looks like the quad ring out of an SCV.
Yep. So it's
It's a
specific.
quad ring, and there's no quad ring left here. So it's worn out.
Okay.
Yeah, this is worn.
Oh, okay. I got you. So it's worn that much.
Yeah, there's that. If you look at the thickness of the outside and the thickness of the inside, you know, there's that much gone off of it. I guess I don't know what you.
Gotcha. No, you can kind of see it, but that's why you can't put them in the
And
machine.
you can't put it in there's a lip seal in here yet. And that'll take out later. There's a snap ring that retains that in place.
Sure.
And that's all there is for the pump. Get these out yet. There's behind that is your discharge valves. You do have a little problem with these.
Okay, I'll bite. What's the problem?
Just a second. I'll show you in a second.
Like, is this the type of problem that costs money?
Yeah.
Oh, I knew I wasn't getting out of this unscathed.
These are supposed to be pressed into the housing.
And they're all loose? So you're about to tell me that
Very loose.
she's junk, isn't she?
When the housing's worn that bad, sometimes you can peen them with the center punch.
I do have, so now is this the same as a 40 series?
Similar.
Okay. I have a 4840s second half of Wisconsin, and I also have something laying under the shop, like in cold storage. I don't know what it is though. These are gone too far. Oh wow. The bottom is actually eaten. They've been hammering in there. It's just about eaten through. Yep, there's kind of that lip.
And it's actually eaten into that lip.
Oh, man. You know how other people have that luck? Like, oh, we just threw batteries in and it fires up. I don't think I have that luck.
Because typically, when you thread this, oh yeah, you can see, look at the heads. They've been hammering against here.
And that's what that little lip right there is. Mm-hmm. Hang on 1 second.
They've been hammering. Those valves have been doing this in there. Because typically when you thread this down, that holds right up against that. But these have been bouncing so long that it's eaten into the housing there and it's eaten into here. The thing we'd have to look for on your 40 series pump, it's going to have fitting size and fitting size.
Well, can I give you some good news? That's not going to matter. There's hoses ran up to both ends.
So we could make whatever.
We can make anything work.
All right.
So it's just basically scrap iron?
Yeah, because there's no way I can get those to retain, and they're so deep. Even if I could get them to retain in there, they're going to just pop out. There's not enough material. There's not enough material left to hold them from bouncing around in there.
What's a reban or a boneyard one?
Bucks would have to go through something with buck.
Well, let me bring you what I got. We'll see if any of it's salvageable.
See if we can make something work there. Shoot, because the shaft is actually, that could have been cleaned up and reused. I can't tell what these feel like. I can press this off and then we can see. The other reason I've had to replace shafts, behind this bearing race is 36 needle bearings. And if the shaft itself is worn, if it's worn, then you got to replace the shaft. I wouldn't replace the shaft because of this, but if that was worn, I would have to.
So possibly we have a salvageable part.
A part, yeah.
A part. How you know.
We'll press that off.
We just found the bad news, right? It's not salvageable. Okay. Well, can't quit the day job. I don't know what the day job is anymore, but can't quit it. And the downside of when you get into these projects is some days there's a joke about the checkbook not being deep enough. Yes. But we'll see what we got. Like I said, I got a couple pumps laying around the farm. We'll check those out, and maybe there's something salvageable in those. The good news is, like, I don't need this to be practical.
This is just a fixer-upper.
This is a toy. This is gonna be a glorified car that if we can put in a field, we will call it an accomplishment.
Call it a win?
Yeah. Not everything comes apart like that, that's for sure.
Okay. Now we'll see what the... Push one pile out of the way.
Okay, so this is where the 36 needle bearings come into?
Needle bearings, you see right there?
Yep.
Go inside of that race, and typically this is where you'll have the wear is on the uphill. When this is operating, this part of the shaft looks really good, really good.
Well, hey, let me bring you a Wisconsin part, and
different shaft.
you're just the bearer of all kinds of goodness.
This is the same. Dimensions are the same, but this is different.
So 20 series or 20 series?
30 series, 4430s, 4630s, 40 series already went to the newer style.
And what they do, just make things beefier?
No, they actually changed, rather than having this and this against the race, they put a small thin washer and it's a different setup completely, and they use this is a little different because only we use 25 needle bearings. They're larger diameter needle bearings on a 40 and 50 series and newer. So this is different. These are different. The shaft is different. That stinks. This I thought, well, main hydraulic pump, that's an easy one. I didn't expect those.
Any idea, like, what would have caused those to chatter like that? Just luck?
Many hours of use, vibration, sure. Maybe. Would this engine vibrate more than
It will, yeah, probably. I think that's pretty safe to say.
But even that, because this is, you know, I don't know if vibration could have done it.
Okay.
I think it's just use and years, and it just,
yeah.
And once they come loose, then every revolution they're doing this.
Sure, they just get it,
they're
heightens it.
They're popping in and out there because it's trying to suck in oil every time.
I love talking to you, but they just, the conversations get expensive sometimes. Oh, we'll figure it out. We always do. There's a reason I live in Mom and Dad's basement.
You want me to pull the head apart while you're here too?
Yeah, might as well. Make it fun.
You can actually see the stroke control valve from here. Okay, do you remember me talking about destroking screws?
That right there explains why that thing was turned in so much, doesn't it?
Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah. Okay, in the hydraulic, in the head of the pump here, you've got your stroke control valve is right here below. And then there's a set screw that we looked at earlier, that's what sets your pressure. And as you push that set screw in further, it pushes this sleeve right here. It puts more pressure on the spring for that sleeve to push against stroke control valve. So I'm gonna take, and I can actually,
oh sure,
you can
pry it up.
But we got so much spring pressure against it because our pump was worn, I'm assuming. That's why there's so much spring pressure against it. So we'll pop that out of there. This is the big spring that This adjusting screw pushes pressure against that spring, put pressure against this spool to go against stroke control valve. So now I can reach in with my little magnet and pull the valve if it's not stuck, which it is. Okay, so we'll take it out the other side. Take this one out.
What causes them to stick?
Usually it's because of metal in them, but this one I don't think it's metal. It just could be just stuck from
Sitting.
Oh, this will tell another story for us.
Yeah, we like stories. You didn't find any gold, did you? Oh, dang, no.
Boy, that's clean. I've seen these things plugged. Is this a screen? And I've seen that screen plugged solid.
So hopefully that means the rear end isn't half shot or 100% shot.
Nothing. There's nothing at all on that.
It means we're not splitting a 50-20.
No.
All right. Well, we're having a little bit of luck. So now you just flipped it upside down.
I got to take the other side out. Now this is where that manual destroking screw would go in. Which, if we were putting this one back in, it would be getting a manual destroking screw. Now we can push, there it went out, the stroke control valve.
So that's what just came out the bottom
Yep,
end.
and this is sticky. It's the original one because it doesn't have the backup ring,
Okay.
but it should fall out of there, and it doesn't. This one has got it's sticky, so it wouldn't have worked anyway.
When you mean went to work, what we went to build pressure?
No, because when this valve sticks, you'd have had to come in with that roll pin and push the valve off its seat, because this would be trying to push it onto its seat, and then hydraulic pressure has to bring it off of its seat. And it wouldn't have been enough, because all you're relying on is the 2 ports here to get oil pressure into it. So that wouldn't have worked anyway. Now, another spool here, and that's it. Head is empty. I've been told that before. Pump is all apart. We have a pump that's body that's not usable.
Is there anything salvageable here? I mean, basically that cam, but it's only for salvageable for 20 per series.
20 series, early 30 series.
Okay. Like the head, I mean, there's really, or you just
There's
throwing?
nothing that I've never replaced, all the years I've never had to replace a head of a pump.
Okay. Can you get the chunk
body?
that's bad? Yeah. Have you ever priced them out? Can you still get that from Deere?
Well, let's check that out. Number 16, I think, is going to sub to an AR94661.
Okay.
Sub AR94660. Okay. AR94660 is a complete main hydraulic pump.
Okay. So they don't even part it out. They just, you just get a complete one.
Yep, that's marked R34. It doesn't matter what it's marked, but it's subbed AR94660.
Sure. From Deere, does it show price?
I'm gonna see your deal with 4115.85 with core 3865.85. From A&I 1327.51. That's an aftermarket main hydraulic pump. AR94660 and an AR94661. There's the 2 different part numbers on the pump, and the 661 I think is I'd have to look, but I think that's the 4020 number, and the 660 is one here. So the only way they change that is they change the lobe on this, like a camshaft, like if you're running a racing cam, you change the lobe and the endurance. And this one it's a little bit below flush. A 4020 shaft, that's not below flush. It sticks out this way a little bit.
Okay.
The machining, so it doesn't have as much throw, so it doesn't pump as much.
Okay.
Usually they have a part number on the tip of this shaft. 43, 7 something.
So why is a 46 and 4850 or 46 and 4640 with a front wheel assist? What pump does it sub up? Is it completely different, or is it
94,661?
Is that like 50 series then, or
That
is
would
it
be similar to the 50 series output because the it's 4-inch point 4.3, and the other one is a 3.3, 3.3-inch point 3 total, and that's the output of it. I don't know how they anyway, and they if you've got front wheel assist, then it went to the bigger pump.
Well, I know this one was 2-wheel drive because we pulled the spindles out of her. Yep.
And that would have only been with the 661 was with the front wheel assist. So,
Do you want me to just leave this here?
if we'd have to get one from Buck or whatever, it has to be assembled anyway. So it's going to take 10 minutes.
Put it back together. So, okay.
I'll press everything back together, put it back together. And
The one in Wisconsin is literally still hanging in the cradle, and that'd be pretty easy just to grab. I have something laying underneath a shelf.
I had a bad one off the 50 series. A couple of years ago, we had one that was shelled out.
I think all those ended up going back as cores.
Okay. I guess the thing would be to be able to do the least amount of adapting if we can figure out what size inlet and outlet are on them.
Yeah, but that's
And where the outlet.
That's our,
they did change.
that's our blank slate though. I got to get hoses made up. I think we can pretty much make anything work because we're not reusing those hoses.
40 series is going to be 1.25 inches. Yeah, it's 1.25 inches and 1 inch. Yeah, that should be the same on a 40 series.
And again, all of that's blank slate. Like I said, ideally, if we could come out, do the 90, suction's not the big one, but the high pressure, do the 90 or 45 out the sides with metal. They 90 degreed the hose. You weren't expecting that, were you? They 90 degreed the hose. Yeah, so they literally just had.
Oh.
But you got to remember, 20 series, the only thing the hydraulics are running is the SCVs. Power steering, SCVs. It's not like a power shift. And so that's kind of why I was hoping this pump would be in better shape. But
You can put on like a 4430.
that's exactly what I was going to ask you.
There's a 45 that comes out.
Yep.
And actually the 40 series, I think, stretches it out versus, I think the 40 series stretches that fitting out.
And I think I still got a 40 series line from Puff.
Well, you're going to have a fitting on that pump.
Yep.
And if that's the extended fitting, that's going to come out and down.
See?
That's exactly what you need. Well, look at that. We're fixing more problems than we got.
We're trying to get a motor out of a bus in a tractor that hasn't ran in 15 years. We're gonna hold off on that. You're solving more problems than we got comment. We're just gonna say we're taking it step by step.
Fine. We should be able to use that fitting off the tractor.
Okay. See, the problem is we can't run the steel line down the side of the frame because the oil filter's in the wrong place.
So you gotta run hoses.
Or we might be able to tweak it. I don't know. We'll see. But now that we're gonna be using 4840 puff or the pump, I will see if we got a steel line. Earlier today, me and the mechanic Larry found out our piston pump is junk, our hydraulic pump is junk. So Adam is actually running over another one that we had here to see if it's salvageable. The funny thing about this, Larry doesn't know yet it's showing up because he hasn't replied to my phone call or text. He's semi-retired. He's earned that right. He just might wake up with a text going, "It's by your mailbox." So if you live in the suburbs and you see a weird oily looking, rusty John Deere looking thing, now, yeah. Leave it alone. It might be salvageable. Thanks, Larry. Thanks for everything, buddy. Appreciate it. This is what you get for putting your phone on Do Not Disturb at night. You're not stopping us. Oddly, I think you're fine with it. It's your wife that I'm a little worried about, but you know,